Welcome back. So this is our policy session, which is entitled Regeneration from Theory to Application. Here we're trying to bridge different approaches: ecological, economic, social, and cognitive regeneration for a resilient future. So today I'm very happy to welcome a set of panelists. Starting from Dr. Harris Eyre. He's the senior fellow at the Rice University at University of Texas Medical Branch, Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association member of our advisory board, and also senior advisor of the McKinsey Health Institute. He's online with us. You can see him. And he is practically the leader of the Brain Capital Alliance, which EMEA is the co-founder, and also myself. We also have a set of panelists, Faye Selimi, that you have already all seen. She's the Deputy Director of the Circular Economy and Climate Institute of the European Public Policy Organization, EPLO, and also partner of EMEA. And Faye, she's an expert in circular economy. Dr. Nathalie Helmi, she's here with us, head of environmental economics at the Centre Scientifique de Monaco. She's also a member of our advisory board. And then here we have Professor Giacomo D'Alisa from the Institute of Environmental Science and Technology at UAB, Université of de Barcelona. Autónomo de Barcelona, exactly. So he's here from Barcelona. And then online, Cecilia Berch, Partnership Manager at the Blue Alliance Marine Protected Areas. For Iberia and Latam at Triscale, President also at the International Association for Regenerative Economies. So we have a great set of speakers today on our session. So let me go quickly into setting a background for this session. And I think we have heard a lot today about where are we going beyond sustainability and how really we can contribute from a research perspective and also from a different disciplines perspective, the concept of regenerative economy. As we know very well, and I'm not going to remind you all, you know, that we have large challenges, societal challenges that we are facing nowadays, starting from the climate instabilities, ecological degradation, economic fragility, and social fragmentation, and also particularly in our region, Mediterranean, the South, and also the African countries. We heard yesterday about the perpetuation of conflicts and destruction, and these are all factors that lead us to more degeneration in the African continent. So, of course, our economic models, they are still embedded in an extractive, I would say, economic incentive. So we need to extract from the earth to allow us to produce. And this is not, or has not changed yet, even if we might see that there are some new developments for renewables, for example, that are completely adopting technology to enhance our production of energy. We are still very far from moving into real renewable scenarios. So in reality, we need to move into also more inclusion of communities and learn from the communities in the different continents, specifically in Africa. And then, of course, we heard some experiences in Bhutan, as mentioned by Stephen today, and they reach certain level of what they call happiness or happiness index, and which is key for well-being. So regeneration, as was also mentioned by Carlo here, with whom we've been working on the TRIS model, which is TRIS is for transparent, responsible, inclusive, and sustainable since many years. And now we're moving into embedding the regenerative principles is taking us beyond sustainability already, but then, of course, embedding the power of research and development and innovation. So I would like to put the discussion of the policy discussion in the frame, and then I give the floor to Harris. So a regenerative economy requires two foundations, according to us now. It's brain capital and nature capital. And these are two engines for tomorrow's well-being and resilience. Next slide. So regeneration is what? It begins by recognizing that humans are embedded in nature, and it is the capacity of the system to renew itself continuously. So it's really this symbiosis between the planet and the people. And this means that we cannot move without each other, and also respecting what I call the boundary constraints of both of them. So, of course, and sustainability is the first step, which practically focuses on reducing harm, but then regeneration means that we are moving from, I would say, net zero to net positive impact. And this is what also was discussed today with Enrico and with Carlo. So moving from, next slide, moving from the net zero to net positive, this also needs many strategy. In fact, if we look at what we have today, it stops us short into neutrality and restoration. What we need is really to what we call moving from the footprint reduction, and this is what we've been doing, reducing our footprint, to what you introduced, Carlo, in the discussions we have made. It's the handprint creation, the handprint creation. So we need to create really further value to our economies. Next slide. So what enables regeneration is the right governance and market signals. We need institutions and we need markets. Without those, it's very difficult to move forward. And then we also need reliable methods to measure positive impact. So measures, data, and trying really to move forward in terms of the estimations, but also innovation systems. And this is really the basis of the regenerative innovation ecosystem and living labs. So we cannot just be economists or theoreticians thinking between ourselves, but we need to really embed our thinking into the economies and be able to apply in real case scenarios and real life scenarios our thinking. Next slide. So regeneration truly in people. Next slide, please. Next. Yes. So regeneration truly begins when we invest in both people and planet. Now, the brain capital is our new concept. And here I have the pleasure to have Harris, who is a neuroscientist, who has really introduced this concept many years ago, of course, with his fellows neuroscientists. But then what we're trying to do since several years is to embed this into economics. So brain capital is our stock of brain health, skills, creativity, and social cohesion. And these are all elements that are essential for bringing our well-being economies into life. And also the nature capital, which of course our ecosystem, biodiversity, and life supporting services that we have already, a lot of us worked on it. Our next slide. So what is important here is also to value. I mean, I don't think I have time to go with this, but the whole idea is to value the brain capital and nature capital, and really to open the pathways for co-benefits and really regeneration. So we started with the brain capital dashboard, and of course, this is all trying to collect all the data. From this data, we are developing an index which will allow us to have maybe a number, a magic number. It does not tell all the truth, but at least it gives us a possibility to start measuring what really matters. And then, of course, the nature capital valuation. A lot has been done in the natural capital accounting and also ecosystem services. Here I have Nathalie, who is an expert in the valuation of nature-based solutions and evaluation of nature capital. And then the core idea of regeneration is the scope benefit between all these systems that we want to create within what we call the regenerative principles. Just next slide. Yes, so this is the dashboard. You can all look at it. This is also interesting because we have free accessible data, and we will continue building on the data collection there. So researchers in different continents can also work on the research and integrate all of this. These are all publicly accessible data, so it's much easier for all of you to work on. So with this, I would like to give directly the floor to Harris to give us the interactions between the brain economy that we would like to put in place. So we're working now for several years, Harris, and then also within the regenerative thinking. Please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Rim, and good to see friends in the room. Sorry I can't be there in person. Next year, hopefully, if you have me back. Let me just figure out my screen quickly. Okay. So it's great to be here as a neuroscientist. We have been dialoguing around brain capital and nature capital for the last few years. We have had these dialogues with Nathalie in Monaco at the last maybe 3 COPs, and it has been very productive and constructive. So let me unpack in a bit more detail now the brain economy and create some linkages between the brain and nature in a little bit more detail. The title of my presentation is Building Regenerative Economies Through the Brain Economy. And so I really am a professor of brain economy these days, and this is what I do day in and day out. And we're glad to see the progress of the brain economy. Maybe I should start by saying that we now have a World Economic Forum Brain Economy Action Forum, so a sort of strategic project with the World Economic Forum in Davos at the next annual meeting in January. So in about 6 weeks' time, we will be launching a WEF Brain Economy Impact Report. And so anyone that's going to go to Davos, please reach out to Rim or I so that we can engage there as well. And importantly, the Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association is a pathfinder with the WEF around the brain economy. So you're in good hands there with EMEA today. So regenerative economies need regenerative brains. The good news is that our brains are not static. They're plastic. There is this construct of neuroplasticity. Our brains can grow and change even into old age. And this is something that neuroscience has found in the last couple of decades, and we continue to develop this field of neuroplasticity. And so it is absolutely key to connect this regenerative economy construct with neuroplasticity thinking. And so as Rim noted, brain capital is 2 things. It's the health of the brain and it's the skills of the brain. So that is what brain capital is in very simple terms. If you remember nothing else today, it's that brain capital is brain health and brain skills. And it's the foundation, of course, then of an adaptive, sustainable, and innovative society. And we believe that there's no long-term climate, nature capital, or economic regeneration without a brain capital focus. So hopefully today you will accept my argument that brain capital is a new lever for us to think about, and we think about greener, more sustainable, and more regenerative economies. The brain economy has been developed in earnest in the last 5 years. We started developing this with RIM in the OECD Secretary General's office 5 years ago within the New Approaches to Economic Challenges unit. That was under the Secretary General Angel Gurria of the OECD. And so we've been developing it since then. An article was written this year about the brain economy describing it as the new thing, the idea that communities, societies, and countries contribute to economic growth and stability through collective brain power. So that's a pretty elegant description. And the journalist said that this new thing in the coming months will be very well known to governments and companies. And so down the bottom, I have some of the organizations involved in our WEF Brain Economy Action Forum, which are organizations from around the world, Latin America, India, Africa, and then, of course, in the global north as well, in Canada and America. We have financial institutions like the European Investment Bank and impact investors, as well as health players, education players, labor market players. So there is a web page. If anyone's interested, you can Google WEF Brain Economy Action Forum or talk more with Rim in the room. So to break the brain economy down in more simple terms for folks that are uninitiated, you guys in the room are all very savvy with this, but we're bringing this brain economy transition often to people that are not economists and not familiar with economic transition. So we need to sort of break it down for them. We describe it in 5 ways. The first is safeguarding brain health. It's about how do we changing clinical health systems and public health, how we infusing more early intervention and prevention and just general better access to mental health and neurological care. Very, very relevant in the global south, in the EMEA region, in the African region, of course, where there are very few, relatively speaking, brain doctors, and where, climate impacts, for example, on people are most extreme. The second is foster brain skills. It's all about engaging in advanced strategies in K-12 education, in vocational training, in universities, and in upskilling and reskilling in the workplace. So that's another a big umbrella there. The third is study. So this gets to research, and measurement is key. So what Rim described in the dashboard and the index is very critical to that. But we're also interested in other forms of measurement at the individual level, with different sorts of brain probes and scanners and such. There is a neuroscience renaissance that we're going through as a civilization right now with advances in AI and microelectronics and such. So we have the ability to do much more advanced neuroscience research. We're interested in not just measurement, but modeling and intervention as well. The fourth is investing. So we're developing brain lens investing as a strategy, similar to gender lens investing or child lens investing. Brain lens investing is about how do we reorient global financial system to be brain positive. So there are certain investments that are made on the planet today that are brain negative, that are undermining our brains. And you can all imagine potential investments like that, maybe investments that have externalities like micro and nanoplastic pollution, or investments that addict people to screens, which is not helpful. So, brain lens investing is about how do we develop tools, analytics, and strategies to channel brain positive investments from pension funds, multilateral development banks, asset managers, sovereign wealth funds. And the fifth is mobilize, which is around coordination. And this obviously coordinating an economic transition is quite something, and something that you all in the room have experience with in nature and climate. And so we welcome feedback from you all about how to do the brain economy transition better. There are clear nature-brain linkages. And this is a paper that we published a couple of years ago with RIM and with other colleagues like Studies-EMANES and folks from UNFCCC. We show here that the exposome, the environmental exposures, can be bad for the brain, like air pollution, like nanomicroplastics, but also the environment can be good for the brain if you have exposure to green spaces. Forestry, for example, can be very helpful to the brain, lowering stress levels, helping people to improve their executive function, for example. But of course, the brain is not just subject to positive or negative exposures. The brain is an agent to influence as well. And so the brain is the seat of what we call green brain capital, green skills, ecological intelligence, creativity, adaptability, resilience. And so we brought this all together in a paper to look at the brain in regards to One Health, this idea of One Health for people, animals, and the planet. So very consistent with the regenerative economy framing. So there are absolutely very strong linkages here. And there's actually one of the groups we work closely with focuses on neuroscience and climate change. They're actually having a meeting right now that I'm missing to speak with you guys. And so anyone that's interested to dive deeper into climate, mental health, neurology, just feel free to reach out. We also co-authored to summarize the paper that I showed before, which is much more biological and technical. We summarized it for the T20 G20 this year as well, and looked at the point that treating natural capital, brain capital in isolation ignores the reality that healthy brains need healthy environments and vice versa. So we're really trying to engage in science as well as engage in policy. There are some other tools I'm just going to quickly show you now that bring to life how we're using neuroscience to try to influence positively the economy and the environment. Here is a tool that essentially allows you to assess when you're purchasing a consumer good, how good is that product for your brain and then also for the climate. And so this, of course, gets you to think when you purchase consumer products, try to nudge you more towards brain positive, brain healthy purchases and climate positive purchases. You can imagine if we filtered everything that we purchased day to day through this lens, we probably would be brain healthier, and we also would have a lesser ecological footprint. And so there's a big a nice website here on this. If you're interested, you can look further. We also engage a lot with the real estate sector. It turns out we spend a lot of our time indoors, and the buildings that we're in actually influence our brains. There's an entire field of neurodesign, neuroarchitecture, which studies the effect of buildings on our brains, for better or for worse. I'm sure you all can imagine when you walk into a building which parts are good for your brain and which parts are not so good for your brain. Here is an index that's been developed by a wonderful group we collaborate with between UCL and Swedish RISE, the Swedish national think tank. It's a neurodesign, neuroarchitecture index to assess buildings and how good they are for our brains. How are they impacting our emotions, our cognition, our senses, our socialization? So you can imagine if we deploy a tool like that at scale, it could really change significantly cityscapes for the better. And of course, green and sustainable practices in buildings is very aligned to this. We are engaging now also in place-based context in Houston, Texas, which is the site of the Houston Energy Transition Initiative, and a lot of energy transition activity. That's the same constituents in the Chamber of Commerce now have a brain economy transition initiative. We're working with hospitals. Actually, British Petroleum is in there, universities, to develop the first city level brain economy transition. And we're making sure that we work with EMEA to look at how to leverage that learning in Houston, Texas, with Catalonia or other areas of Spain. We also were engaging this year in the G7 in Canada. Successfully, we engaged with different engagement groups on the right: business, civil, labor, science, think tank, women, youth. And now we're moving into the French presidency of the G7, which is one of the reasons why I'm speaking to you from Paris, as we engage with the French stakeholders. Here are other examples of how we're engaging the brain economy more practically in different sectors, crisis contexts, built environment, etc. We're engaging in multilateral G20, for example. RIM was recently in South Africa at some G20 brain economy programming, and we have other regional manifestations of brain economy, like, for example, in California, we're developing a Californian brain economy plan. So getting to my concluding slide now, I think hopefully you've got a sense of the brain economy, how the brain and nature links together. My suggestions are that we look to integrate brain capital into regenerative economy frameworks, and I think RIM slides showcase that, and we'll unpack that in our discussion. We should treat pollution reduction as a brain infrastructure investment. Less pollution means better brain infrastructure. That means we got to think about air, heat, noise, for example. We need to pilot brain positive standards for buildings, investments, urban planning, education, and we should think about co-creating a regional EMEA region, for example, brain economy roadmap. So thank you very much. And my final point is that if we only regenerate soils and seas, but not our minds and communities, we will fall short. A regenerative economies must also be brain economies. So thank you.
Thank you, Harris. I think that was a very nice concluding remark, which will be the starting point of our discussion. So I would like to turn to Faye. Faye is an expert on circularity. How do we move beyond circularity and integrating these regenerative principles into our production systems, also into the incentive systems and overall in the legal frameworks?
Are they going to change the slides from? Yes, as for the presentation. Okay, my presentation is about how circular design, regenerative production cycles, and material innovation together form the foundation for the next phase of sustainable development. As Rim already said, we are moving beyond simply reducing environmental harm. This is circular economy, actually, towards systems that actively restore ecosystems, strengthen communities, and regenerate natural and human capital. This shift is not only technological, it is fundamentally a design and production transformation. Next slide. Why this topic matters today? Model with the take, make, and waste principle is no longer viable. It generates massive material losses, carbon emissions, and systemic vulnerability. This is why circular and regenerative models are no longer optional innovation pathways, they are structural necessities. Next slide. Circular design fundamentally redefines how products are conceived. Instead of designing for short-term use and disposal, we are designed for durability, reuse, disassembly, and material recovery. Waste is not treated as an external problem anymore. At the same time, we move from ownership-based consumption towards service-based business models where products remain within closed industrial loops. Next slide. We are moving from circular to regenerative economy. While circular approaches aim to reduce negative environmental impacts, regenerative systems go one step further. They actively restore ecological functions, rebuild soil fertility, sequester carbon, and strengthen socioeconomic resilience. In regenerative production, industry does not only minimize damage, it becomes a positive force within natural and social systems. Next slide. Regenerative production cycles operate through closed loops of energy and materials. They are often inspired by biomimicry, where industrial systems imitate natural ecosystems that operate without waste. Material flows are biodegradable or endlessly recyclable, while value chains become increasingly localized. In this model, production itself becomes part of ecological infrastructure. Next slide. Material innovation is one of the most dynamic drivers of the circular and regenerative transition. We now see the rapid development of bio-based materials derived from algae, mycelium, and agricultural waste. At the same time, recycled composites, smart materials, and low-carbon alternatives replace conventional high-impact materials. In many sectors, material innovation determines whether circular design is ever technically feasible. Next slide. Material choices directly shape the energy intensity of production, the environmental footprint during use, and the possibilities for recycling or biodegradation. This is why material selection is no longer a purely technical decision. It has become a strategic, economic, and even political choice that reflects broader societal priorities. Next. These principles are already transforming multiple industries. In fashion, we see recycled fibers, modular garments, and textile-to-textile recycling. In construction, bio-based materials and circular building design are gaining traction. In packaging and industrial design, material reduction, monomaterial solutions, and reuse systems are expanding rapidly. Next. Despite this progress, several barriers remain. Initial investment costs are often high. Many circular and regenerative technologies are still in early stages of technological maturity. Regulatory frameworks lag behind innovation, while many existing business models are incompatible with circular production logic. Social acceptance and professional education are also critical factors. Why this transition is worth it? The benefits of the transition are profound. Next slide. Circular and regenerative systems create resilient supply chains, reduce exposure to material price, and drive innovation. They generate long-term economic value while delivering environmental and social co-benefits. In this sense, sustainability shifts from a cost factor to a strategic investment. Next slide. When circular design, regenerative production cycles, and material innovation operate together, they form a coherent systemic framework. We move from minimizing harm toward creating net positive industrial ecosystems. This To conclude, this transition is not merely technical. It represents a profound transformation in how we design products, organize production, and define economic success. Designers, engineers, policymakers, and industries all share responsibility in shaping this shift. Ultimately, the materials we choose and the systems we design will determine the sustainability of our future.
Thank you. That was amazing in time. Thank you very much, really.
Lawyers talk a lot.
And then really, thank you very much, Faye. I think this circular redesign and also trying to rethink production systems with the regenerative overall thinking on the materials we use is essential. And of course, this needs a lot of technology and also rethinking what type of materials we're using, and those materials could be useful for us, but then they are not harmful for our planet. So this is key for regeneration. So I think I see Carlo taking notes on adding the material use and what type of innovation we can have there. Our next speaker is Nathalie. Nathalie is expert on oceans and then restoration of the ecosystems at the oceans level. So what is your view and how we can achieve, in fact, regeneration and eventually fast before the degradation of our oceans in terms of oxidification and all of this that we have talked for many years, you know, will have a negative impact on us, on the planet, and on us as people as well.
Thank you, Rim. When you asked me to talk about regenerative economy in the ocean, I thought I can promote the work that we are doing with some colleagues, a group of multidisciplinary and international working group that we are working on governing novel ocean-based climate actions in rapidly changing oceans. Next slide, please. So this is the group of people. We met first in Bergen in Norway and then in Tasmania. And the group is led by Australian colleagues. And we have different disciplines, and we are all working to try to understand what is happening in the ocean and especially what we can do, what are the interventions that we can do. Next slide, please. So first we published this paper in Science, and we worked on the different kind of interventions, like marine coastal restoration. We can restore some species like mangroves. We worked on marine renewable energy creation, like offshore wind energy. Marine social institutional capacity building, like coastal adaptation planning. Also marine emission avoidance schemes, like offshore oil and gas moratoria. On marine biological carbon dioxide removal, like aquaculture for carbon sequestration. on marine climate and marine climate finance and markets, like blue carbon markets. Marine geoengineering, it's like ocean alkalinity enhancement, and marine bioengineering assisted evolution, especially for coral reefs. And next slide, please. For what we found in this paper, that institutions should be aware of what is going on, like in the United Nations, especially UNCLOS, and this is the UN Law of the Sea and UN World Heritage Convention. The motivation can be altruistic, political, economic, and pragmatic. And also the actors are diverse, like scientific community, investor, NGOs, communities, and indigenous people. Next slide, please. Yeah. We also try to evaluate the benefits and the risk of each kind of intervention in the ocean. So this is what appeared. And you can see that some interventions have more risk and some have more benefits, but there is not one perfect solution. It's a bunch of solutions. Next slide, please. And this paper has been published in Nature Climate Change. And we saw here the novel governance preparedness. And we tried to link each marine intervention to the effects on climate change. And some have good effects on carbon dioxide removal, but some have no climate goal, in fact. They just, for example, restore the ecosystems, and it has no effect on the rest, on the climate. And we wrote a policy brief to try to link the governance in the ocean with the marine climate interventions. And you can see here that, it's the next slide, sorry. Thank you. You can see here that some interventions are ineffective because we try to evaluate their feasibility. Some are harmful, and we also have some distrust about some interventions, and this is at the political level, for example, and some have not really good opportunity cost or benefit. And the next slide, please. This paper has been published in Cell Report Sustainability. And here we wanted to study the promotion of socially responsible governance of new ocean-based climate actions. So we wanted to really understand the socially responsible governance with different dimensions. You can see anticipation, responsiveness, inclusion, and reflexibility. So we found out that some climate interventions were more socially responsible than others. And next slide, please. And finally, we produced this policy brief. It is oriented towards responsible investment in ocean-based climate action. And what we wanted to do is to explain why it is important to invest in the ocean, and it is embed governance readiness into investment decision, support right-based and tenure-secure intervention, fund co-designed locally led initiatives, invest in social and ethical capacity, and advance climate, ecological, and social goals simultaneously. Thank you.
Nathalie, for putting an emphasis on the governance preparedness for the protection marine systems. And this also introduces our next speaker, Cecilia, who is the partnership manager of the Blue Alliance Marine. So can you put back the slide maybe Cecilia on screen? Yeah.
I don't have some slide. I can share if you want a deck or something, but I haven't prepared some slide.
No problem at all.
Okay. I can start. My name is Celia, not Cecilia, but no problem. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. To tell you a little bit about Blue Alliance and what we are doing, we are a non-profit organization dedicated to regenerating marine biodiversity while creating sustainable livelihood for the coastal communities who depend on coral reef. So today we co-manage over 2 million hectares of coral reef across Indonesia, the Philippines, and Tanzania, through long-term delegation of management with local governments. So in each location, we've set up a local Blue Alliance with a team of rangers, scientists, community workers who work daily to improve enforcement, generate ecosystem, and support livelihoods. So this was a quick brief on Blue Alliance. To talk a little bit about the pressures we have on nature. So since last year, the pressures on nature have only grown on coral reef, on biodiversity, and on the communities depending on those coral reef. They still remain at risk. We are still living through the 2024-2025 coral bleaching event, the most extensive one ever recorded. Around 82 countries has been affected. Other pressures could be like, for example, in our work, we recorded in some areas of Indonesia, the destruction of up to 200 square meters of reef every week due to blast fishing. But coral reef are not only beautiful ecosystems, they are also life support systems for millions of people who depend on them for food, for income, and for coastal protection. And this is exactly why Blue Alliance was created, to regenerate coral reef ecosystem by combining marine science and community leadership with innovative finance. So our work is really rooted in community engagement. Over the years, we've built a large ecosystem of partners with the government, with the local communities, with the philanthropic foundation, the impact investors, and technical organization. So Blue Alliance is in essence a coalition of committed actors working toward the same mission. So another part of our work is around each MPA, we develop a pipeline of social enterprises that we call reef positive businesses in sustainable fisheries, community-based aquaculture, and ecotourism. These social enterprises are here to create livelihoods, to alleviate poverty, and at the same time generate revenues that will be re-injected in the MPA conservation part of our work. So for the long-term management of those MPAs. So this is where our story really sits. Communities become the agent of regeneration, and economic activity reinforce conservation. So let me give you some quick example. For example, in Zanzibar, our new social enterprises called Aquahub support more than 4,000 households through sustainable sea cucumber farming, while at the same time regenerating vital seagrass ecosystems. Across our network, we now have 7 reef positive business developed, and we have more coming on the coming years. 3 of them are already generating revenues over $300,000 per year. So these results show that protecting large socially connected ecosystem is not only scientifically but also economically viable. And this is how conservation becomes really a regenerative economy. Another core element of our work is the financial innovation behind this model. So last year we launched with BNP Paribas the Blue Finance Impact Loan Facility. This really marked a key milestone in closing the financing gap of marine protected areas. So in short term, the facility enables us to provide funding to the reef positive business operating within the MPAs. So it's a blended finance vehicle combining grants, impact loans, refundable grants. And over time, the revenues from these enterprises, as I was saying before, will cover the operating cost of the MPA. So this will turn into a self-sustaining system. So in fact, the grant part, the philanthropic side, act to de-risk the early stage social enterprises and act also for the MPA management. And after that, impact loan accelerate the business growth. As these enterprises will grow, they begin to generate their own revenues, which will progressively cover the MPA operating costs. So across our sites in Indonesia, Philippines, and Tanzania, we've learned a few essential lessons about what truly enables us to have a regenerative economy. It needs to be community-led. Conservation needs also a business model, and blended finance really unlock at scale. And with all this, collaboration is really the key. And to give you a little bit an overview of our goals, by 2030, our goal will be to manage 9 million hectares of coral reef, and by 2050 to regenerate a quarter of the world's coral reef.
Thank you, Celia, for also mentioning how community engagement is important and really having this alliances, private-public partnership type of thinking would be essential to, in fact, move our economies into at least more regenerative thinking, particularly in the case of coral reefs. And I absolutely agree that these are essential living systems that have very important ecosystem services that need to be protected. So with this, I would like to give the floor to Professor Giacomo, been working on degrowth. And in fact, we have a lot of discussions today about beyond GDP also in terms of well-being rather than just focusing on this metric of GDP growth. Obviously, regeneration is much more beyond sustainability. So we need to have a net positive overall on our actions and co-benefits. So how to create 1 + 1 = 3, rather than just keeping, the story of numbers. So here you go. So we all ears to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody. I want to thank you, Yegane, for supporting me since she invited me to be on this panel, and also to Rim, that is steering the discussion. My idea is to present a little bit degrowth in order to avoid the stereotype and false and unfounded conjecture about the concept and the framework, with the idea that after perhaps we can interact with the others and try to push further our discussion. So please, next slide. So just to present a very complex model here, this is the model of growth economy. Basically, we are happy when we have more of the same for an economy. Sometimes we have problem if the same of the same, so a stationary kind of economy, and less of the same, that will be a recession. Sometimes is associated to degrowth, but is not. So let's see what degrowth is about. But before to give you a definition, next slide, please. Well, just to introduce to a definition that I will give you at the end, what degrowth consists in. No? First of all, there is a problem of imaginary. No? we want to challenge. So we need to unlearn. Normally, it's already very complex to learn, but the most complicated issue is to unlearn the beliefs of the growth economy. If you look at the Gregory Bateson book, Steps Towards an Ecology of Mind, you will understand that we are facing a very problematic issue, because unlearn what we have been taught for century now, it's very complex. But of course, a part of unlearning, then there is also a process of proposing and acting for an ecological sound and socially equitable society. So on one side, we need to challenge specific common sense. On the other side, we need to also embrace new common sense. And next slide, please. I introduce to the very basic common sense. And I'm using common sense in a very appropriate way, let's say analytical. I'm using common sense as Antonio Gramsci was using. Antonio Gramsci was the founding member of Communist Party in Italy. He actually one of the most influential cultural scholar, let's say, and very much used for his concept of hegemony. But hegemony was an articulation of common sense for Gramsci, okay? So if I speak with my neighbor about what is growth in very generic terms, it's this idea that we all embody in Westernized society, that in order to stay well, we need more. We need more travel, we need more cars for the Sultan, so we need more travel space for pesos, right? Another common sense, because this is also very important for Antonio Gramsci, that the common sense are plural, it's not just one. So in order to make an hegemonic narrative about what a good life look like, we need many common sense and the articulation of this common sense. Next slide, please. So another common sense is completely related to the idea of limits, okay? In our society, the limits are always obstacles. So we perceive that when we have a limits, we need to overcome it. You know, psychologically, we need to overcome our limits, and also technologically, economically. So indeed, I mean, this is probably will be interesting when we discuss after in the at least one round of discussion. If you look at how, you know, how the very epigon of our capitalism embrace the idea of limits, is that they are aware. I mean, we are nowadays, we are all ecologists, right? Indeed, he's very ecologist, is recognizing that Earth is finite, and this is why we need to go to the space, right? So it's exactly, so the limits, so Earth is limited, so we need to go to the space in order to grow more. And this is, well, the very cutting edge investment of our society, no? Travel space. It's very important. I mean, this is even very important because this image is coming from 20 June 2020. These people were going to the space while 7 billion people were locked down. Okay, so just to understand how powerful they are in terms of imaginary. No one was blaming in this moment. So what are the, next slide, please. What are the common sense of the growth? So what we are trying to push forward. So this idea of live simply so others can simply live. Because what we are not really taking care of is the fact that the extractive economy and the colonial economy of Western society has made the life of other people, of other beings, clearly no. So next slide, please. Another common sense about the limits is the fact that indeed the limits are generative. I want to make this example, the metaphor used in one of very nice novel of an Italian novelist that then became a film, The Legend of 1900s, in which the pianist is saying, luckily, the piano has just 88 keys. And thanks to the limit of the piano, I can do infinite music, right? So he's embracing the limits. So this idea of embracing the limits as generative. And he's saying at the same moment, if the case of my piano will be infinite, I couldn't play anything because I would be completely freed by this infinite possibility. So this is just to introduce to different common sense and our imagining. Next slide, please. So now perhaps I can give you a definition. So degrowth is, first of all, is an ensemble of discourses and practices. So it's about imaginary, about different common senses to transform the society, putting at the center of our concern sustainability and care for life. Now, of course, care also in terms of reproduction. At the center of economic imaginary for growth, always there is productive, never reproduction, right, of life. And this is why sometimes many feminists, radical feminists, have been saying that, you know, the issue of capital is the fact that they fight against life. So the struggle is between capital and life. So next slide, please. And at the same time, that is a discourse, a different articulation, different common senses is also a reconfiguration of societal metabolism that can guarantee life conditions that deserve the joy to be lived by everybody. So basically, I also used to make this sense if you really embrace, like now in a very dichotomic way, if you embrace Jason Bezos' ideology, let's say, I don't have anything against Jeff Bezos, of course, it's just an epigon, a representative of what growth means. I mean, we are facing now a certain kind of bifurcation somehow, no? Or you embrace really this imaginary, and finally, perhaps in 70 years, we have 1 million people on Mars, or you prefer stay with degrowth and we have 9 billion people on the Earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Giacomo. And I don't know if Harris is still there and if he listened to the presentation, but you made me think that embracing limits as generative, or maybe we would also think that through our collective brains or brain power, this may be the new resources or regenerative resources. So limits will become new regenerative resources. And perhaps this is how innovation will be put there. So limits are just limits because, you know, all the resources are finite. But then if we start thinking with regenerative principles, so those limits will become the next regenerative resources, because we just find the solutions innovatively through our collective brain power to allow us to move forward. I don't know, what do you think, Harris, before I go back to the panel? I know that you have to leave at 5:30.
Yeah, well, I think that being clear about what the goal is of what we want to achieve is important. You know, well-being, flourishing, etc. The thing that strikes me is that in the spirit of growth, what is happening now is that our brains are being monetized by tech platforms. You know, the attention economy is valuing captivating us and more time on screens to sell advertisements, and the revenue models of these big companies is quite destructive to our brain capital. And so to Giacomo's point, partly related is that this quest for growth is leading us into a pretty bad place. I think it's pretty clear that, you know, the TikTokification and the fracking and hacking of people's attention is very corrosive, and it is leading to worse mental health at population levels, worse literacy, worse numeracy. And so these principles of degrowth, I think, are welcomed, because we can't keep going on in the current economic model because it's corroding our brain capital. And that's controversial to say when I am in Silicon Valley, where I spend a chunk of my time, because they're massively profiting as a region off of this work. But the truth is that it is hugely corrosive. And how on earth will we have the creativity and resilience that we need if we keep seeking economic growth, which means that we're hacking our brain capital, and furthermore, we're also, because of the capabilities of neuroscience now, we're monetizing our brain data. These tech platforms are able to infer so much about us, and if we don't have the right legal protections, they're gonna sell it on to third parties and monetize it further that way in the pursuit of growth. So I think I just take Giacomo's point seriously, and fitting this into the realpolitik of global economics is the challenge, where everyone's focused on productivity and economic growth at the moment at the G7 level, for example.
Thank you, Harris. Would you like to? Oh, you said. Perfect. So I think I see also the time, because I know that I said I want to finish at. Yes, yes, we have 30 minutes for the light, but also I would like to give you a bit of time to stretch your legs. Agustina, you will tell us a little bit more on community-led regenerative case studies.
Yes.
So
these are community-led cases where we need to highlight the importance of how we approach the community, so that regardless the geography where the project is basically implemented, we need to understand the value of methodological design in social field approaches, so that we have a clear framework of data collection that allows us to understand the habits, practices and logistics, cultural logistics of the community. Then we design the actions, and then we move on to the policy, the public policies to be implemented, so that the design, not the other way around. Why? Because we've seen many projects that are technically really strong fail. Why? Because they are basically conceived instead bottom up. Top down, sorry, because those interventions consistently fail because they don't take into account, or they neglect the social fabric they claim they want to transform. So honestly, like bottom-up regenerative practices are central here, because they are building from the existing social structures and working with them and not despite them. And based on this, scaling this project is not a matter of copy-paste, the same project somewhere else, but it requires new field studies and renewed understanding of local social dynamics in the new community that same project, don't worry, is going to be implemented. So basically, I would like to go over some, in this matter, what we were talking today and maybe yesterday a little bit, but mainly today, about the ESG frameworks. In a way, they have pushed the inclusion of social dimension, but without a methodological grounded, and without a frame in which we know that certain methodological structure needs to be implemented. So whenever I listen that many projects talk about community engagement. It's so wide, the community engagement, could be from a focus group to a coffee conversation with a community. So that's community engagement. So it needs to be robust, and it needs to provide you data. It's not just talking to the community, because speaking with the community is not the same as involving them, and involving them is not the same as building shared ownership on the project. And the community needs to not to be part, needs to be the seed where that project is going to be implemented. And I'm going to be giving you a very nice example. Same technological project, renewable energy, implemented in the coast of a community in Colombia. No electricity. People spending a lot of fossil fuel and money in having electricity. So what does the project manager, in this case the government, says? We'll give you the solar panel. They implemented this without asking the community. They put the solar panels, they went 1 month afterwards, and the solar panels had this thick, horrible dust. That is to say, they were not being used. Did they ask the community if they wanted that? No, they did not. They just, in a populist way, they provided what they thought they would be needing. Because everybody needs electricity, right? But not this community, they didn't want it, okay? Same project, solar panels, another community in Uruguay. They actually did the work with the community. They asked them if they wanted electricity, and what did they say? No, we don't. We rather keep on, we want to be aside of being, you know, just what the professor said. We don't want to be plugged to the computer and to the screen all the time. We are not into this. Just please put us some at the school. There's a community that there's a school in the community. Just put internet there, and whenever we want, we go to just check our emails over there. Totally different approach. Now in Salta, in Argentina, in the north of Argentina, a new renewable project is just about to be implemented. So they're having a new, different, absolute approach in which the community was the one who actually asked to implement renewable energy to the community. So you see, same project, solid, but different approach. So it is the community, the one who actually needs to provide legitimacy to building this project. So I will take some remarks, some quote that Madame Hala Said said yesterday. She said, "Inclusion is the mean through which regeneration achieves scale." So talking about the pathway to regenerative scale, I'd like to say that basically, inclusion requires understanding who must be included. Who are you talking to? Who do you want to include? Is that community or that society willing to change their current practices, or they are not? So that's the big question when we talk about inclusion in social science. And maybe to link what you mentioned in the beginning, Rim, I guess that this is where brain capital comes like a connective tissue of all the dimensions that we need to understand when we want to deploy a solid project. Social, economics, and that flexibility that brain capital provides is like the core asset that we need in order to move in this pathway from sustainability to regeneration. I'm done.
Great, thank you very much. So we have practically 23 minutes before the light show. I will take 2 questions from the audience. Martin and Yara.
Thank you. This is not a question as such. This is just to poke you a little, because it's 2 days I'm listening about this brain thing. So I aim to be provocative, okay? I have 3 teenagers and I have many friends. So you can perhaps imagine this as a boxing match. Okay, so in the blue corner, you have your brain power and investment in brain community and all that. And in the red corner, you have TikTok. Seems to me this is like a fight between me and Mike Tyson. There is no chance. Because remember, there is no referee in the ring. The only one that looked like a referee was the European Commission, and they gave up when Trump squeezed them a bit. So I think rather than thinking how do you enable the brain economy, I think the challenge really is how to stop the slide into the darkness.
Australia banned.
I know. What is it going to do? They all go, the teenagers are going to exchange notes on how you go around the ban.
Yes, but I think at a point in time, policies will have to take actions. And I think Australia has done a ban.
Yes.
Having a country like Australia to ban this type of social media, this is already telling us that this is serious. And I think in all the schools, they have to be banned. Because otherwise we will end up with children that are only taking input from...
Yes, I agree. I agree. I do not know what the answer is. That's why I said I'm just poking you.
So this is why brain capital is important, because if the policies, the governments are taking brain health, especially for children and teenagers, as a policy priority, then of course they will move into banning this type of devices and this type of input in our brain. Because in fact, whatever it's like food, toxic food to the brain, which is the same toxic food that we eat, like for example, highly processed food, it's the same thing. So in reality, policies will have to take actions.
Okay, maybe it'll work, maybe not. But should
maybe
we,
the European
should we
Union,
maybe target the same wiring in the brain, but for good? Open question.
Maybe that's the next conference we can discuss it. Yara.
Thanks very much to the panel. Really, really enriching conversation from very different perspectives. I love a Gramsci quote, so I will serve you a quote back and say, maybe particularly to Nathalie, on the blue economy and governance question. I think Gramsci said that when one regime is dying and another hasn't been born, this is the time of monsters, right? And I think we're in this space where our governance systems, particularly around the oceans, have been built over the last 50 years. And you see practices like we saw a few months ago, where you have one administration that licenses offshore critical minerals exploration and exploitation possibilities for a company that's not even within its jurisdiction, that's based in Canada. Particularly within the critical minerals race, even though we had worked collectively as an international community for many decades to establish a governance regime. And that's one side of the challenge we have. Thinking about the role of the blue economy and climate change as well, and I think this is something that Carlo Rim and I discussed a few weeks back, that the assumption is that we don't have enough critical minerals on shore to be able to respond to the challenge of the green transition, and that the answer is going to be found, in the deep sea and engage with deep seabed mining. So thinking about we're in a little bit of a paradox here that also reminds us of the water discussion that we had earlier, of the policy paradox. I'm not expecting answers on this. I'd love some kind of ideas of if has been any kind of conversations on your research around that. Just because I think that these are really important questions for a multidisciplinary approach to be able to crack that problem.
Okay, I'll take another question from Shahir, and also, then each one of you 1 minute to close, because.
Yes. Thank you, Rim. Thank you all the panelists. Really an impressive panel. I have a question for Giacomo on the degrowth model. From your perspective, what would be the role of the state in this in such a context, on the one hand, and on the other, especially also international donors and international financial institutions in general that promote the traditional model of growth with all the neoliberal policies and the perception that the government intervention at the end of the day will be to correct just a market failure, which is a very traditional and simplistic way of perceiving the role of the state. So how do you perceive the role of the state, even just conceptually, even if it cannot be very pragmatic or very empirical, but how can you see the role of the state in such a degrowth model? Thank you.
Last question, Teka.
Maybe build on Shahir's comment for the degrowth. Understand the agenda, and if you are a leader of African government and you have presented the connotation of growth versus degrowth, and the World Bank recently pushing towards job creation and so forth. So do you think that this agenda will be bought by, especially in African context where you have less, not more, and live simple? On the ring for you on brain capital, I'm trying to learn this new term, and in the common standard in economics literature is human capital. I quickly went through the dashboard you just announced it, and it seems like the traditional indicators with plus some additional matrices. Could you briefly reflect on what is really the innovation? I understand a bit of it, okay, the cognitive, emotional intelligence aspect to it, but what is really new? It's like putting together different matrices in addition to the human capital. And finally, on the participation, very quickly, I like the agenda of participation could be not only at the community level, at the continental or regional level. For instance, African Union complains a lot in the UN representation. Do you see beyond the community, the participation, the inclusiveness aspect to drive the adoption of whatever kind of technology to bring regeneration? Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll start with Nathalie on the questions.
Okay, about the deep sea mining, I'm doing a lot of research on deep sea mining. I'm in a working group working specifically on deep sea. So we wrote a paper, and it's also multidisciplinary as all my research. We have economists, we have lawyers, and we have, of course, natural scientists. And what the message is, as we don't know what is going on as a biodiversity in the deep sea, we should take a precautionary approach. And this is all the discussion around the BBNG treaty, of course. And extract the mineral there. And now I'm working on a paper that is almost ready to be published. We are targeting Science journal. And the idea is to show that even economically, it doesn't worth it. So
That's interesting.
Yes. There is any chance that you can put again my presentation while I'm trying to answer some of the questions? And you go at the end, please. Wait, before, like here. I mean, this is the metabolic accounting of UA country 27, okay? This is just to give an idea of what does it mean when we, for example, discuss about circularity, okay? Here, we are mobilizing around 7 gigatons of materials. The 20% of these gigatons are coming from outside Europe. And the green and the yellow one are biomass and fossil fuel, okay? If you take out this, that is the fuel energy of the EU economy, you collapse, okay? There is nothing circular in our economy. But what is more important, next slide, please, is that this extraction, this is a map that we at ICTA are producing, is the Environmental Justice Atlas. The students here of environmental sociology are also contributing to it, finding new environmental conflict related to the extractive procedure that our economy creates. And this person is a nut collector, was a nut collector, environmental defenders, killed by those people in Brazil that are interested in deforestation and also related to our dairy that is concerned and basically is based on meat, no? So we need more meat from Brazil to take it. So, I mean, this kind of economy is completely destroyed by a specific extractive economy that has the core in Western imperial dynamics. So USA and Europe. Now we are more almost vassal of USA as European. So I think that the point is not to make a label apply to every place in the world. I think that Agustina was pretty clear on this. I don't really care if you want to name it, let's say, Ubuntu, as the philosophy in Africa, or you want to call it in different way. The important thing is what is the project, what is the procedure, no? And I think basically degrowth, what is suggesting, and then if it resonates to you and you want to call it in a different way, I'm pretty open to do it. You know, I'm comfortable to that, but you don't. So degrowth is about, first of all, change the priority from colonial and destructive legacy, okay, to, on the contrary, giving priority to humans and ecosystem flourishing. So how? Care, health, food, housing, support local economy, support commons and community-led governance. So on this sense, I'm coming also to the issue of the political institution. No? The political institution as the, well, for example, Gramsci was saying always the state is never a thing, it's a relational institution. This relational institution nowadays, of course, is occupied mainly by those people that think that the only solution that we have is to have policies that embrace growth. So first of all, we need to substitute these people, or at least culturally, their priorities. Okay, so we need to transform somehow the institution. I would say to commonize a little bit. So make this institution like commons. I just give you a very simple example. I have 2 children, they go to school here. And for example, I play football in the school, in the playground of the school, the Friday, okay? So the school is open to different, is a public school, of course. So it's, let's say, is a representation of the state. But somehow there is the organization of the parents here that in accordance with the people that you have the responsibility of this building, to make other activity, somehow to make a commons, so we can take a decision how there are some people doing yoga. I like to play football, so I play football. There are other people making music and so on. So somehow are making this institution different, appropriating this institution. So the process of the state is, first of all, to make this change. No, we should participate in the institution in a way that make us also responsible for that. No, so we take care of the place where my children are going also to the school the day after. No, we use the same shower, so we know if this is working or not, and so on and so forth. So this is one issue. So culture is the first important thing. The second one is, of course, then to support, for example, commons. So one thing is that you have, let's give you an example of the Barcelona municipality government. Well, the last one, not this current one. They were, for example, pushing for social housing, 1% in Barcelona. Okay, it's terrible low. Let's say Vienna is 45%. Amsterdam 42, and so on. So they were trying to push social housing, but the problem of social housing, in many cases, what is it? That is the assetization of housing. So you are part of the social security project, but then after 20 years, you will monetize it, you will sell it on the market and so on. So you don't solve the problem. On the contrary, they were pushing for co-housing and not giving the ownership to the people that need it, but just give them the responsibility to govern, let's say, to manage this building for 90 years. So they don't have a consistent right to sell it and so on and so on. So these are like other policies that political institutions at different level could embrace, of course. And social and solidarity economy also changing, no, the kind of financial investment that you do will make a big difference. For example, I did my PhD on waste. Well, I am Napolitan, so it was my biography that decided what I should do for my PhD. And for example, oh, nice, good company. So, for example, one of the first papers that I wrote about the issue, and that what was called the waste crisis, that I called a crisis of democracy, was that I was looking at the number of the tender, you know, and the incinerator in close to the city where my parents live, and this is why I embrace also the conflict, was getting 100 million of euro of subsidy, 100 million. The first time that I published this paper, the peer reviewer was saying it's impossible. We don't give in USA this money even to nuclear energy. I said, you know, these are censored, I mean, they are sacred kind of data, and you don't know, I don't know. I just did hypotheses about that. If are reasonable, you have to accept and publish my paper. He accepted. Now, after 20 years, the data are available. Well, they took 125 million euro per year. So 1 billion to build an incinerator. So these kind of policies are the disaster kind of policies that actual government and political institutions are doing. And this is what we have somehow to change, no?
Mia non è Catanzaro, just to say. Well, so to answer your question, I have to say that research would have to say what the community wants, not me, but maybe to bring to the floor or to the table the Foucault, not only Gramsci, which I love, but Foucault I love best. I would say that power is not static, it actually flows, it comes and goes. So maybe now the power is biased to one side on technology, but it can perfectly flows to the other side. So as it happened, as it took place in Australia, it could take place somewhere else, of course.
On your question on brain capital, we are publishing a paper too in January, so it will solve your question. But just to be quick, we are really bringing the brain health into the game. So in fact, brain health becomes endogenous in the construction, not just a result. And then this means that our brain become an asset rather than a cost. Means brain health become an asset rather than a cost. And then connecting brain health and brain skills create what we call the co-benefits. Also, there is this interaction between the two, because apparently in neuroscience, there is what we call the cognitive reserve, which is connected to education. So there is research, but of course we need to do more research on it. Means that the more education and reskilling we have in our life cycle, especially when we are in adult, to even later on, this is long life learning, we can accumulate reserve, what we call the cognitive reserve, and which could be resisting certain diseases of dementia and Alzheimer. This means that the brain capital stock is not static for a nation, is dynamic. So if it becomes like this, it will be certainly impacting, is productivity, okay? And then eventually well-being if it's well constructed. So I don't want to even use growth anymore, because then we can say we can extract more from our brain for more growth, but that's not. In fact, the idea is to live longer with a much better brain health, which allows us to increase well-being of the nation. So this is the differentiation from human capital. I always call it it's a rough indicator for which we create. So we created just for our to create human capital attainment, return on education. So we can do something as economists, but in reality, it's not taking into consideration the quality of the brain. Now, you might tell me different qualities, it depends, but then the brain is a muscle in reality. The more you work it out, if in absence of disorders. But then the thing is, in the life cycle, I learned from my fellows neuroscientists that the probability that, we will live with certain disorders, for example, depression, anxiety. All these are impeding our capabilities. And this is now we are working with some neuroscientists on what we call the executive function and connecting this to brain capital. And this is, in fact, the connector. And more will come on this research because we have started this in 2020. And we are really very excited of this collaboration with neuroscientists, and also they are excited with working with economists. And this is also a new thinking that we need to develop. And I think this is a key, a core, one of the pillars for regenerative economy, as was also mentioned by Harris in his introduction. So with this, I would like to thank the panelists. Thank Harris, he's not there anymore because he has to go to another meeting. And Giacomo, Faye, really great interventions, Blanca and Nathalie and Celia, so not Cecilia, Celia. And thank you all for the day. I know it was quite dense. Hopefully now you can walk a bit in the light. So it starts at 6. I don't know how is, yeah, I made it on time. I made it on time. So I don't know what is the logistic here. How do we just go there? We follow you? So we follow Danny? Okay, Yagane, no? Okay, you agree. Yagane, okay, we will follow both. Thank you.